I always say that short-term rental pricing is an art and a science. You know, on the surface, it seems like it should be pretty straightforward, pretty intuitive, but there's a lot of nuance that goes into correct pricing strategy. And at the end of the day, Airbnb is just a huge search engine. You know, just like Amazon or Google, if a potential customer or guest does a search and you show up on the 5th page with your listing, you're probably not going to get nearly the bookings that you could have got had you shown up on the first page if you had the right pricing strategy in place and you did a few of these nuanced things. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through 3 main pricing strategy tactics that I think are really going to boost your property and help you maximize revenue. I'm Kirby Atwell, and I work with people who are working full-time jobs, but they want to start creating cash flow through investing in the highest performing short-term rentals possible. And I have a program that walks you through this process step by step, where I go even deeper on pricing strategy, amongst other things. So if this sounds like it's what you're looking for, you can set up a call with me personally to discuss it at the link that just popped up below. All right, so let's dive into the first pricing strategy tactic that's really going to boost your bottom line. Airbnb has said that the first 3 weeks that a listing goes live, they promote that listing in the search algorithm. So if you do a search of any area, you pick a town, do a search, what you're gonna see is the map kind of zooms out above that town and the top listings pop up. Those are the ones that pop up first, the top listings. And so you click on any of those, and typically what you're gonna see is those are the listings that are rated the highest by guests, or they're brand new listings. And so Airbnb will promote brand new listings as top in the search right off the bat. Hey, real quick, the sponsor for today's video is the #1 banking platform built specifically for rental property investors. I am constantly looking for the best tools to manage my properties and my finances, and in my opinion, Baselane has built the ultimate all-in-one solution. Baselane allows you to set up unlimited virtual bank accounts and debit cards for better visibility in your cash flow and finances, and you can also do other things like sign leases with tenants, collect rent, keep track of your books, and review your analytics, and finally, it's all in one place. Plus, they have the industry-leading annual percentage yield, which is just a fancy way of saying you make a lot more money on the money that you have deposited in your Baselane bank accounts. So I personally use the platform along with over 40,000 other real estate investors. So you can use the link that just popped up, and it's also in the video description below, and open as many business bank accounts as you want, and it's all for free. The link is baselane.com/Kirby, which is my first name. That's BASELANE.com/KIRBY. The reason they do this is because they're testing those listings. And so what they want to see is, #1, do people click on that property? That's the first metric. And then the second metric is, once people do click on it, do they actually convert? Do they book the property? Or is there something that's creating or causing them to go away from that property? Because Airbnb is a business. You know, they want to promote the listings that are going to drive the most revenue. So you can take advantage of this fact by doing a specific strategy right in the beginning, right off the bat when you first list your short-term rental. So what we do is we block off the days beyond 30 days out. So we only open up our calendar initially for the next 30 days. And we drop the price point. We look at all the comps in the area, and we really understand pricing clearly on what's available, the other inventory levels, and the price level of the other inventory. And we price our property just below the going rate for other properties. So if all things are equal, we're gonna get booked before the other properties. We also don't have a whole bunch of reviews, so that's kind of working against us. So this causes more bookings by having that lower price point. Then what we do is we give our first 3 guests a 20% discount. Airbnb recommends you do this. I highly recommend you do it as well, because if Airbnb is recommending it, then they want to see that in order to boost your listing even further. So what this does is it causes a lot of activity on your listing. And if you think about it, if Airbnb is testing you or your listing in the first 3 weeks, they want to see all this activity. They want to see bookings coming in. And so our goal is to get every single day booked up that first month, if at all possible. And we know that we're gonna leave some money on the table that first month. We're not gonna maximize revenue in the first month, but you gotta think about it as like a giant flywheel. And so you're trying to get this flywheel going. You're trying to get Airbnb to recognize your listing as a top listing that they should promote in search, so that going forward after that first month, then when you open up your calendar beyond the first month, then your listing is top of search. The second pricing strategy tactic that's really going to increase your revenue is understanding how to price your property based on the different seasons and how far out you are from those seasons, particularly your high season, because that's when you're making all your profit. In the rest of the season, you're probably breaking even or making a little bit, but you really need to understand how to maximize revenue in the high season, because that's what makes your property viable, really, if you think about it. A few key mistakes that I see people make, and it breaks my heart when I see this, but I see it so often, is number one, people would just say, well, my property's a $200 a night property. And they set the price point at $200 a night. And that's $200 a night in the highest of the peak season. You know, maybe it's like 4th of July weekend or Memorial Day or Labor Day. And they could potentially got $800 a night for that weekend, but they just say, well, it's a $200 a night property. And then it's also $200 a night in the middle of January in Minnesota when nobody is traveling to that location, and they don't drop it to increase their occupancy. And so they're leaving money on the table in that scenario as well. But the most money they're leaving on the table is in the high season. So the strategy that we recommend for the high season is when you're still 6 months out from the high season, when it's the opposite, when you're in the low season time frame, set your price point to a price that's at the very top of the competition. So you really need to understand the inventory level and the competition in your specific market. And so you look at all the comps, understand what they're charging in terms of price point, and you'll see there's a range. But what you want to do is price your property at the very high end of that range when you're 6 months out. Because what I also see people do is they price the property toward the bottom of that range or in the middle of that range, and they celebrate when they're in January or February and they have their entire summer booked out. But what that indicates is that you just left a ton of money on the table, most likely. Because what happens is that there's only so much inventory for a specific market. So if somebody wants to travel to that market, based on when they're booking, they only have so many properties to choose from. And that goes down every single day that you get closer to that high season, because there's just not enough properties typically for the amount of people that want to travel to that area. So if you price yours at the top, then if you think about it, if this is the inventory, every day the cheapest property is getting booked. All things being equal, people are going to just book the least expensive property. And so as you get closer to the peak season, the average price point increases for what's available. So by pricing toward the top of the market, it allows you all these other properties to get booked up. And then as you get closer to that peak season, you can get your property booked at a price that's actually much higher than you would have gotten it booked at had you dropped the price in January. And you can know that because there's not enough inventory for the amount of people that want to travel during that high peak season, that you can wait until you get closer to that date to actually have it booked, and it will be booked at a higher price. And the final tactic that's really going to boost your income as a short-term rental owner is something you can do to maximize your income in the other season, in the slow season. And that is adopting this midterm rental, short-term rental hybrid strategy. So if you think about it, in the peak season, for most people, you're at a very high occupancy. You know, for us, almost every night is booked throughout the summer. But then as we get into the winter months, especially the deep winter months like January, February, typically what we see is that for short-term rentals, it's mostly just weekends that we have booked out. And that's typical for, you know, seasonality. But if you take this hybrid approach of maximizing short-term rentals in the summer and then maximizing midterm rentals in the off-season, you could potentially keep your occupancy at 90% or higher. I already talked about what we do in the slow season to maximize our peak season, but then once we're getting toward the end of our peak season, in order to maximize our slow season, what we do is we offer a 25 to 35% discount on 30-day plus stays. So during the peak season, we don't have any discount for long-term stays because we don't want somebody to book at a 30% discount for these days that we would have had booked at the peak price anyway. So you're just leaving money on the table if you book longer term bookings or midterm bookings at a discount in the peak season. However, in the slow season, when you're just getting weekends booked out, then it makes a lot of sense to give a 30% discount where you'll get 100% occupancy, because the overall revenue then during that time frame is actually much higher than just booking out the weekends. So if you can get a midterm renter in there, now you've maximized your lower occupancy. It also leads to less work for you to have the turnover. Most of our issues come from guests who come during the slowest season, and they're at the cheapest price, and typically they're staying for the shortest amount of time. For some reason, that correlates to a high degree of issues compared to our higher priced premium guests in the summer. So I highly recommend maximizing your revenue between the two seasons by doing short-term rentals only in the summertime. Don't give a discount for longer term stays, and then really target on the Airbnb platform these longer term stays by giving a 30% discount. And you can even put in your title long-term stay discount or midterm stay discount or great nurse property, or whoever your ideal target guest is for that midterm stay. You can really highlight that in your listing. So you could go really deep when it comes to short-term rental strategy and pricing. This is just 3 big things that if you do right off the bat, it's really going to increase your revenue. But like I said, pricing is an art and a science, and the rabbit hole goes deep. So if you want more information, I created a guide. It's called The Ultimate Guide to Picking the Highest Cash Flowing Short-Term Rental Possible. There's a link to that in the description below, so you can grab a copy of that. While you're there, hit the like button if you like this video, if you got something out of it. I appreciate you spending the time with me today and checking out this video. God bless, and I'll see you in the next video.